so it's probably going to catch me talking about it.
That's okay.
All right, we are good. All right, so everybody, thank you for joining. Today is the first official episode of Stumbling Forward. It's a little story about kind of the twists and turns and lessons learned to get us to where we are. Today, my very, very first guest, thank you, Emily, is Emily Adams. Emily is the co founder of Transformative Leadership. Emily, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh yeah, where do I start? Yeah, first off, just thank you for allowing me to be part of this, and I'm super excited to be part of this and provide value and any kind of knowledge that I can. A little bit about me. So, born and raised in the Amish culture, left when I was 17. Went through a culture shock. Fast forward, graduated from Purdue in organizational leadership and supervision. I had no idea that I was ever going to use my degree or not. I just wanted a degree because I only went to sixth grade education in the Amish culture. So never went to high
Wow.
school. Yeah, they only go to eighth grade, which is equivalent to a sixth grade education, elementary education.
Well, so how did you fill that gap between sixth to eighth grade and then college? What did you do in that process?
So when I left, I started to get, I went to go get my GED. And
Okay.
that was the whole process because I never did algebra. I never wrote a paper a day of my life and then later published a book. So that's kind of funny. But there was things that they never taught in that school, language, English, writing, different things. So they just really taught the basics. And I went to go get my GED. From my GED, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go get my degree. Like, I'm gonna go get my bachelor's degree. And I remember walking into the student advisor. I had just gone through a divorce too when I decided I was gonna go get my degree. And I remember
Wow.
walking in, and she goes, I was like, I want my bachelor's degree, and I want it in 4 years. And she was like, that's not possible. You're a single mom of two boys. You're working full time. So I was working about 40, 50 hours in the automotive manufacturing space. I was a supervisor. And she's like, that's not possible. That's unrealistic. And I was like, you either give me a plan to get my degree in 4 years or I go somewhere else. I wasn't really tied to Purdue. Like, I was like, whatever, it was close, it was convenient.
Yeah.
And then I realized that I could start applying for all these grants and all these scholarships as a parent going back to school. So
Yep.
I graduated in 4 years debt free. I didn't have any debt with my degree.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so but
Fantastic.
it was a learning curve because I was now sitting in classrooms with, these younger people, and I was there just to try to get my degree and get out. And so I stayed enrolled in school even in the summer months, and that's kind of how I managed to graduate in 4 years. Looking back, it
Fantastic.
was it was a trauma response because staying so busy and staying in the loop was how I coped with divorce, with leaving the culture, and really finding out who I was as a person. So it was definitely a trauma response, but it served me in the moment. So that was that.
Wow. And my thought right is like this can go in several directions. Is one is the trauma response and how you, because that's something too that I recognize as keeping myself extremely busy. I've been through a divorce, been through some traumas throughout life, and my thing was to always throw myself into work and just be busy and just go, go, go. But at some point, you have to process those feelings and those emotions and things that come up from that to be able to healthfully move forward. So, how did you handle that? Because then I'm going to have another question for you, but how did you
Yeah.
handle that piece of it?
That really was, it was not until I went through a huge spiritual awakening where I sat down and started processing things. And that was really the hit of the hit. I had reached such a low bottom of like depression. One of my closest friends told me, she's like, you have two choices: take a vacation, because I never took a mom vacation. Like, I was full on single mom all the time,
Yeah.
career, corporate, just doing all the things, power lifted competitively because that was my outlet. And I got to this point where I was so burnt out. She was like, you either go check yourself in or go take a vacation. Those are your options that you have right now. And I took a solo vacation to San Diego and it changed everything for me because I was able to sit, process. I cried for the first 2 days while I was there, just literally did nothing but cry. Like there was so much deep grief and I didn't know how to
Mhm.
process. And instead, I just like, pushed it down, pushed it down, pushed it down because that's what I was raised to do. You don't have feelings, you don't have emotions, you suck it up and you continue on. And so I did that for years and suppressed it and then started to unpack it. And then fast forward, found meditation, which completely changed my life and opened up me in different ways of, wow, there's a new level of awareness. And then that led into, different types of therapy. So I did EDMR therapy, which is like for a lot of PTSD and trauma.
Okay.
And that was a huge catalyst for me to kind of continue to grow, to continue to explore. And then I did a lot of self development, inner work, went down a lot of rabbit holes, like you name it, I probably did it. So, but that really kind of opened me up. And then it wasn't really until probably, I would say 2023 and then into 2024, I was like, all right, we can stay on this constant healing, 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 healing. And that
Mhm.
also becomes a crutch for us not to step into our purpose. And so then I started shifting my mindset of like, okay, I can process emotions on the go. Just because it's emotion doesn't mean that it has to hold me there. And now when I have an emotion comes up, all right, it's allowed to be there, but I don't have to wallow in it. Like I don't have
Right.
to stay in this space of feeling constant sadness and we can switch and change just like that. And also not labeling the emotions of like, oh, this is bad or this is good or this is,
Yes.
fear, happiness, sadness, they're all emotions and they're all
Mhm.
great because they are showing us, they're reflecting. So yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a journey.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That's super impressive. And I agree with you. The need to you do need to take time to heal. And that's something that I think a lot of people avoid is doing that. But you also, you can get kind of like keeping too busy. You can get in that slump of always healing. And then like still it's keeping you from doing something else and moving forward. And so there is a fine line, I think, between doing the healing work, but also then moving forward and saying, okay, emotions are going to pop up. They are not me. I'm feeling
Yeah.
it. It's usually just something to inform you about something or to say, okay, I do need to take some time to feel sad or angry or whatever, but then let it go because it's not you. You don't have to own it. You just feel it and then let it go. But I think your journey too is really impressive because, growing up in the Amish community, your your experience as a leader. So you worked in the automotive industry for a while, which is super male dominated. The fact that you went to college and that you moved into any type of leadership period, how did you jump into that coming from the Amish culture, which does not really support women in leadership positions at all?
Yeah, I always joke and say if I became a leader, anybody can become a leader because I was programmed at a very young age. Like women are not leaders. The men are always the leaders, and it doesn't matter what you do or say, you're not a leader. But intuitively, like I always knew I was a leader. Even growing up, like I would never follow the norms ever, and I still don't to this day. Like true manifester style and human
So
design.
this makes sense now. Yes, now that you know.
Yeah. But how I made the transition, so I had at 17 when I left, I also got pregnant and had no idea that I got pregnant. And because
Oh,
there's no sex education in the Amish culture. And so my coworker actually had to tell me that, girl, you got morning sickness. And I was no, like, no way. There is no way that I'm like, I did not see myself be a mom, right? So I got pregnant and I was like, okay, now I've got another human I got to take care of, right? So then I was like, I need to find like something that's stable. And there was only one place that would hire me without a GED or without any kind of education. So I went into a manufacturer, automotive manufacturing, as a temp agent. Like I was like, all right, just pay me,
okay.
temp service. And they told me if you got your GED, we'll hire you full time. So I ended up staying there and working up in my career there. And what I've learned there was it was my work ethic, the foundation of what my parents had instilled me as far as work ethic, showing up, doing your job, and
Hmm.
doing it very well, served me very, very greatly in that because I was able to move up in the company. So before I go into college, I was already at a supervisor level. So I was managing production from front to end, from the time the product started to the time it got shipped out, and then went into college. And then when I got my degree, I was like, all right, like this place is not serving me. So
Yeah.
I was like, I need something that is going to serve me, and put me in. Like I basically couldn't grow anymore in the company. Ended up leaving, and then I went to go work at Honda for a while. And it's interesting because even at Honda, it was basically very much like I grew very quickly, and they told me like you're one of the ones that has grown the fastest, and we can't promote you anymore. And that was eye opening. I was like, how can you not promote me? But they're like, well, you're already at reporting into the president on like this manpower level. Like I was managing manpower and headcount on the M category. Like for you to promote more, like you've only been here, a short amount of time. And I was like, whoa, like that's crazy. And I
Hmm.
can't believe. But what I did to get there was literally do my job and also look outside of the box and to really lean into the leader that I was. Like, oh, I know that I got this. I was handed some projects I had no idea how I was gonna do. Like, I didn't know. I was like, I'll figure it out. And I can remember the one project that really kind of put me at the top was I was handed this project and they're like, cut your headcount budget by 1.5 million. And I was like, what? And and mind you, I was the only female leader in this in this area. And I'm like, but my coworkers aren't getting cut. So it was kind of like this, okay, all right, we got to figure it out. And figured it out very much so. And, put the processes in place, you know, became very creative. And I remember the division manager was like, wow, I can't believe like you actually pulled that off.
Awesome.
And I was like, yeah, because when I'm put up against that, I know that enough about me that when I'm put up against a certain thing, I will figure it out. It doesn't matter, I will get resourceful, I will get creative to be able to figure that out, which that project taught me, you're not always going to know the steps, but you will know how to figure it out. You'll know how to move.
It's awesome because sometimes when people are put up against the wall, they have that fight or flight or freeze or fawn response, and so sometimes they just I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to do either what I was told or I'm not going to do anything until someone else has to step in. So the fact that you're able to take that and do something productive with it, and then do something that was even better than what you were asked to do is impressive. And you think about I don't know if you've taken time to like really give yourself kudos, just because from the little bit that I know about you, from talking to you a couple times, your history and your experiences, like you shouldn't be this good, but you shouldn't, like that's what I think is that, all the stuff that's been ingrained in you and how you work. Like I love that you give your parents kudos for the work ethic because it does go a long way. Like work ethic is huge. So just attitude and effort is always huge. But taking that and doing something even more impressive with that is incredible. So take some time to give yourself kudos if you haven't yet, because that's just your journey alone is great. And I can only imagine what kind of example you're setting for your sons and how they are probably viewing leadership and women in leadership. And, I also want to take a pivot to talk about your spiritual awakening, because that's something that I thought was really impressive too. And for those that aren't familiar, you're talking about human design and that you're a manifester, which is somebody who is a disruptor, who is going to challenge status quo. And it's something that so after I talked to you, I actually did my profile, and I'm a generator, which I know is in its own way, it's really great and impressive, but it's also like the worker bee of the world. So I'm like, womp womp. But I know we all have our purpose, but yours is like really, it's awesome and one of the more rare types to be a manifester. And so can you share a little bit about that and how you've used that as far as your the current business or just your path in general?
Yeah, so I would say if you don't know what your human design is, literally it takes less than 3 minutes to figure out your human design. And this was such a huge moment. I had a human design reading actually done by someone that was an expert in human design. And as she's telling me these things, I'm like, how do you know this about me? Like, how do you
Yeah.
know this? And so I started to do more work around it. And so manifestors, we're 9% of the world. And we're very much wired in a way, the way we work is very sprint and then rest. So I could be in a work sprint for 7 days, 21 days, and then I'll be like, all right, I need a break. And that break, if it lands on a Monday, Sunday, whatever, I'm taking a break because that's like my work. That's the way I work. I also am very like manifestors are high vision disruptors. They are not here to make you feel comfortable. So I could never figure out why I would walk into some rooms and immediately I could feel people just get uncomfortable. And I'm like, I didn't even speak to you. Like, what happened? But it's the energy that I
Strategy.
give off. And I've had many people like, especially in dating, tell me like, "You're so intimidating. Like, I can't be around you." And I used
Wow.
to take this as something negative, but then I understood like, no, this is just me really stepping in. I'm not being purpose like I'm not on purpose like trying to intimidate anybody, but I do know like I think very, very high vision. I think very, very big. I think differently. And I will question the status quo all day long. I will ask the questions. I don't have a problem with that. I disrupt it. And then when I look back of my life, I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. You know, my soul
So
chose
much
to come
sense.
into this Amish life where they're like, we're going to have all these rules for you. And I was like, no, you're not. You're not going to take us there. Like, I was such a rebel in that way, but I couldn't use my voice at all growing up because I was just like, no, be quiet. Like, you're not allowed to, you know, have those types of conversations. So fast forward as a business owner, I can now understand why I work the way I work. And my business partner is a projector. And so I'm very high vision and I am great at starting things. And I will start the project and she comes in the back and closes the project. So we have this yin and this yang balance. And she says that when I'm in a sprint mode, she was like, you act like the world is on fire and we got to go. Like, and I know that. And then I also know in parenting, my boys have told me the same thing. Like, mom, you get into these modes where you're like, hey,
Yes.
let's go. All these needs, like, it needs to be done, 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 done. And then I'm like, oh, so I do the same thing as a parent. And then, you know, the way I recharge and the way, like, I have to have boundaries, even with my boys, to say, hey, I need solitude. Like, do you need anything? Because if you don't need anything, I'm gonna be out. Even there's some weekends where I'll be like, I'm not gonna be your mom. I'm gonna be here, but I'm not your mom for the weekend. Like, you're old enough to take care of yourself. You're old enough to like, if you need something, let me know. Other than that, I need to like recharge because that's
Yeah.
how I
Me time.
recharge. So it's just really interesting. And I always love to like understand people's designs because if you have a lot of manifestors on your C level, it's going to be like butting heads a lot
Yeah.
because everybody has that vision and everybody wants, no, this is the direction we're going because
But nobody has that follow through to actually get it the rest of the way. It's a bunch of ideas, maybe conflicting ideas, but then like no doing.
yeah. So even at a team level, if you can understand what your team is, it's just game changer. And understanding that different types also appreciate different types of communication. For me,
Yes.
direct to the point, no fluff, no bullshit. Don't ask me like I just need the raw stuff. I don't want all this extra stuff. My business partner is different. And then we've got someone else on our team who's a generator and she absolutely thrives in data and research. Like that I mean, I'm like that is a freaking skill because I do not have the time and the patience to look up through pages and pages of no, miss me. So you know, like understanding this, and then we also know like the next person that we want to bring on our team is a manifesting generator because that's what we need to balance us out. And then you know the profile lines, like I'm a 4-6 profile line, so I know I connect a lot of people with a lot of people. And then
So
the
that's
six,
what I am too. I just found I'm also 4'6". I'm still learning all of this because I just came up last week after you and I chatted because I said I'd heard about a lot of this recently. Oh, my dog's really intrigued about this too.
ah,
Um,
I love
she,
it.
she's I'm also a 4'6". Um, and so I haven't done enough research to get into all the details. I'm trying to learn as I go, but I'm also a 4'6", but as a generator.
Okay, that makes sense. So the
So,
four
so
pro
teach me, Emily, what does that mean about us?
the four profile line is a lot of connections, connecting with a lot of connectors. So I know a lot of people and I have a lot of resources. And so anytime people is like, oh, like I'm looking for XYZ, I'm like, hey, I got you. Like I'll link you in an email. And with the four profile line, my biggest lesson that I was able to learn is having boundaries and not being a people pleaser because when you do
Mm,
this you feel like you're drained and like people are just using your resources And so now I choose to believe that I get paid to make connections. And if there's no reciprocity, I'm not connecting anymore. Because I've
Right.
had people come to me multiple times for multiple connections and they've made tons of money off of it, but there was no reciprocity back. And so then I start to get bitter and I'm like, okay, we got to put some boundaries in place now. So as
Yeah.
a four line, that was one thing. And then the six line is very much role model. And so that's really stepping in as the expert, really stepping in into that role model leader position, which also makes sense why you are doing what you're doing as a 4-6 profile line. So, but the sixth line is one of the lines that I'm still integrating to really step into that expert position, to really own that leadership because it's a huge role. It's a very there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, and to really sit in that and understand this is how I operate. And but yeah, it's I could go on and on about human design. It's an incredible tool.
So I
10
thought
out
I
of
will
10.
follow up with you because like I said, I've in the last maybe month, I've heard about it 10, 15 times just through different people's like posts or like on threads or just randomly. And I'm like, oh, okay, so interesting. And then when you and I talked about it, I was like, okay, now like I definitely need to look into this because I keep hearing it. I feel like it's a sign like nudging me, like go check it out. So I finally checked it out, and it is fascinating. And for me, again, I'm still just learning, very very basic level. But just for me, again, I feel like the generator is the worker bee, which sounds really unsexy when you talk about it, but we all have our
However,
purposes. But we have what is super fascinating, and it makes a lot of sense, is this energy. We have nonstop energy, especially if we are aligned with it. And that's something, when I love what I'm doing, I can work tediously. Just whenever, do as much as I need to do, get it done. I can. And I can also make myself do things I don't like doing because I have this energy. However, I find myself burning out and becoming bitter and frustrated if it's not something that I am aligned with, which is I think my last job, I was there for only a few months, and I loved my team. I loved what the job was. I did not like the culture and the environment, and I was not aligned with it at all. And I could force myself to stay because that's what I do. Like I can make myself do almost anything and I can come at it tirelessly. But I was like, it was starting to impact lots of parts of my life where I was feeling really frustrated and upset, and it was impacting my marriage. And I was at my desk like 14 hours a day on weekends. Like I just really was burned out from it. And so I learned now, like, okay, yeah, you can, but if you spend your energy on things that are not aligned with you and your higher purpose, you're going to have those reactions. So it's really cool now because when I'm working on my current business, I love this stuff. I love to help people. I love to coach people. I want to develop people. And that's something where I can spend a lot of time. But also then my energy tends to soak in people when I'm especially like in my zone. I attract a lot of people to me who want that energy because we help to motivate the rest of the other types with that energy. And so that's something you talk about boundaries is having to be mindful of who is in that circle and who is pulling from you.
yeah.
Because if it is one-sided or if it's not necessarily in the best of intentions, like that's something that can negatively impact the generators too. So it's super fascinating stuff. And it makes a lot of sense when you look back at it and say, okay, looking at my life now with this new lens, so it's interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I would also say like one of the things that I've learned is the I initiate, I inform, and so that's my strategy. Like also look at your strategy, right? How you move, you inform, you initiate. I don't ask for permission. I used to ask for permission for everything. And when I stopped asking for permission and just moved, and so now I'll tell my business partner, hey, XYZ, let me know if you have any questions. If not, we're moving. And so initiating things. And then I couldn't understand, like, I was like, okay, I know I initiate, but I would connect with these people that wanted to start a business, but they didn't know where to start. And literally, after having conversation with them, it was like I initiated them to start. They would send me a message, they're like, oh my goodness, like I just started my business. I'm like, this is wild.
That's
But
awesome.
knowing those things and like how you what your strategy is, whether it's to inform and you just move, some like the projectors they wait on invitation. However, that's a whole other like different type of conversation, but it also makes sense like why you felt like frustrated with people, they're feeding off your energy.
Hmm.
Totally
And
makes
so
sense.
I forget what it's already called because I'm still super new, but it's waiting to respond. I'm supposed to wait to listen to sacral energy to if I get a yes or a no, and to say, okay, don't just jump in and do everything because my natural energy level is to like, yeah, I can do that. I can take that and be a yes man to stuff and just jump in. But I'm supposed to wait to see does it really feel like a yes? Is
Yeah.
this actually a no? Because you might immediately say yes, but then a day or two later and be like, this wasn't actually something that I'm aligned with doing, and now I don't want to do it. So I'm supposed to, which is hard for me because I'm a doer and I'm a jump in and get it done. And so having to be more on the receiving side and wait for things like that's something that I'm working on. And I'm like twiddling my fingers because I'm uncomfortable about it, but like I have to stop jumping in and just trying to do and make like force things to happen and wait more. And that's been a shift in how I do things because I just love to start. But I did do she does not know this yet because she was asleep, but I did my wife's the other day and she is a projector and she's a 6'2", I think.
Okay.
And I still trying to figure that out. But I love that we both have sixes, but then like hers is I don't know what the first number versus the second number, like the placement is, but she's a 6'2" projector. And so I was trying to
Okay.
figure out like how do we communicate because we're very different in so many aspects.
And one of the things I would say too that I have done before, I've taken my business partners because she's a projector. I think she's a 3-5 profile. And I've done it with my boys. I've taken them and put mine in it and said, put it in Chat GPT and literally said, based upon what you
Oh.
know, what are some of the things that maybe communication gaps or like how can we communicate? How can we be in relationship? And also having those conversations. So I would go to my boys and I'd be like, and even my business partner, I was like, so does this resonate when I say XYZ? And they're like, yeah, how did you know? I'm like, oh, Chat GPT, like help me figure that out. So my son, who's a 6'2 profile, he's a manifesting generator. He's very much hermit mode. So he comes in and out. So he loves his space, loves his
Yes.
solitude, but at the same time can be very, very social. But when it's time to unplug, he needs to unplug. And then my other son, he's a manifesting generator 3-5 profile line, he learns through experiences. So just and he also I think it's the 5 line. It's one of his lines where he can very much go into a victim mentality. And so now he knows that to
Oh,
know, oh, okay, that's coming to the surface. I can actually empower myself. I get to learn. And
interesting.
so just like understanding that, but yeah, use ChatGPT. That's what I've did. And I've also used it in a way to look at like, well, how does it feel good for me as a business owner to market my business? Because I inform, I'm direct and to the point. I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm not going to sell you something that you don't need. And so
Hmm.
like, how do I really utilize this? And for me, I've learned like scheduling my content is important because if I'm not in a work sprint, I ain't creating content. Like I'm just not. So when I'm in a work sprint, I'm like, okay, cool. I can knock all this content out real quick and then I'm done. And that's, very much the way I work. So I would highly recommend to put it in ChatGPT.
That makes so much sense. As soon as you said it, I was like, oh, duh, why did I not think about that yet? But yeah, like I said, just started doing this and I got her actual like time of birth the other day. And so at nighttime she had fallen asleep and I was like "Doo, doo, doo," on my phone in the dark and I was like, trying to just figure out like how all the things. I'm like, this makes so much sense though. It's super fascinating. And I think everybody loves doing any type of personality assessment or any type of assessment that tells you more about yourself. And so this is something that if you know your date and time of birth of all those people out there who make fun of the astrology girlies for wanting to know like what was your time and date of birth and location, but if you have that information, it does tell you a lot about like your inner workings and kind of why you are the way you are. And especially if your son has a little bit of a victim mentality and your style of communication being very direct, like that might be a source of conflict for you where that you both have to be aware of now like okay, I need to adjust how I say this and he needs to adjust how he receives that. It makes a lot of sense on how communication can go awry if you're coming at it from two very different places. Not even that it's miscommunication, it's just your lenses and how you filter things is so different.
Yeah, I would say the other huge thing for this too is understanding how people like to be appreciated. So different design types like appreciation in a different way, and so knowing and understanding that. And so for my business partner who's a projector, it's literally telling her like, "Wow, I see you. Like I seen what you did," and then like really acknowledging certain things And then with my boys, it's completely different, right? They like to be appreciated in a different way. And I am not a celebrator. My business partner loves celebrating. And we'll hit a milestone. I'll be like, okay, cool, let's move on. And
Next.
she's like, we didn't even celebrate. And I'm like, okay, go celebrate. And she goes, no, we are going to celebrate. And I'm
You
like,
can't celebrate
oh.
by yourself. That's a sad party, Emily.
So, but it was really having those conversations with her to say, I don't even feel like we didn't celebrate. And in her, if you even go all the way into like down the rabbit hole and look at the lines and the gates, she has a gate where she doesn't like to close things unless she celebrates. And so now knowing that, when we're like at the end of a project, we're going to celebrate because that's important to her to like close things out.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. I have so much to learn still. There's a lot to it. There's so much to it. You said the gates and the lines and
Yeah.
there's a lot, and I don't have the terminology down yet, but I started going down that rabbit hole, and it's so fascinating. So I'm sure I will follow up with you outside of this to talk about all the things that I'm learning, because this it has been a game changer. And so
Yeah.
that's something that one of the reasons why I titled our topic, I think, was how human design and self-awareness like uncover authentic potential, because that was something you and I talked about, was really knowing yourself and understanding how to manage you helps you to manage a business, other people, a team, your children, just relationships. And so really getting in. So I think human design for folks, if they have not gotten into it or learned about it or heard about it, it's incredible, and how it helps you to uncover things that you just how you operate.
Yeah, and to also like for me, it was almost my permission slip that I needed to be the authentic person because I am very like bold in the way I move, and I have very much like I don't care, like I'm gonna make the moves that I need to make. You either like it or you don't. And I've gotten, in the past, I've gotten backlash for that of like, why do you move that way? And I've been told, in the corporate space of like, yeah, you kind of need
Yeah.
to tone it down. And I'm like, tone it down in what way? Like, can you tell me more? Because I don't know what I need to tone down. So
Yeah.
now
It's
it's
just
like,
me.
yeah, now it's like taking up all that space. And when we do that and we step into who we truly are, even when it's uncomfortable, we're like, oh, a new me's coming to the surface, not sure what's gonna happen. But when we do that, we also start to trust ourselves more. We start to
Yeah.
really deep dive into the inner trust of like, this is who I am, and show up in that authentic way. And especially if you're a business owner, like that's huge because that's what's gonna resonate with your clients. That's what's gonna
Yes.
resonate when you are speaking online. And it's always interesting anytime I meet someone online and then I meet them on Zoom or in person, they're like, you're the same person. And I'm like, yeah, I'm the
Yeah.
same person.
Yeah. Good or bad, yes. Take it or leave it. This is what you're getting no matter where you meet me. This is what you're going to find. But I think it is super important, like you said, as a business owner, because there are there's probably not any single individual business that is completely unique. There's always multiple of something. And so what you're selling really is you and your version and your style of it. And for me, like a lot of it is personality and the way I care about people and support people. And so for me, that's something that's really important, is like I'm going to hold you accountable in a firm but fair way. Because yeah, you can get leadership training pretty much anywhere. There's so much stuff out there, but the way I do it is very unique to me. And so if that's something that's appealing to you, then great, let's work together. If my style is not appealing to you, you're not going to like what I have to offer, and that's okay. It's just we're not aligned. And so that's something I think is really important, is to own who you are and stop trying to fit yourself into a box, because it's never going to feel comfortable for you. But then you're not actually attracting the things that are supposed to be for you. And that's something that I'm learning, is this inner network of connections. And there are people, whether you've met them yet or not, that are aligned to you, for you, that you're supposed to meet, you're supposed to help. But if you're not kind of putting out like that bat signal of like, this is who I am, like you're not going to attract them. So you have to just accept yourself and own it. And if there are things you don't like, you can work on those, but to really bring your best self to every situation is how you're going to find the people and things that are meant for you in this lifetime.
Yeah, and I would also add that as you continue to grow, evolve, and expand, then you also get to leave behind those connections that are not meant for you. And
Yes,
that's
it's
huge.
hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. I
Just
literally just wrote a blog post about that yesterday. It's so hard when you, especially if you're new to that. to understand that like it is okay to lose people that are no longer in this phase of your life.
Yeah.
Go
And
ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off on that, but it's this
no,
the
no.
timing is spot on.
Yeah, and I think for me, it was really understanding that the people pleasing, like I had to heal the people pleaser. Like I
Yeah.
can't bring everyone with me to the top, or I can't bring everyone to the next level. They all get to make choices. And, if they choose to stay here, that's their choice. And I don't control that. I'm only responsible for me and my actions. And for me, I know that I'm always going to be growing, evolving, and expanding. And anytime I have exited situations, people, places, things, and I've allowed myself, exit, grieve it, move on, something better has always come in.
Yeah. No, I think it's beautiful. I said it's terrifying. It can be painful, but it's beautiful at the same time because you have a security blanket of, your identity, so your job title, your past job, your a relationship, your friendships, and then when you start to shed those things, it's scary to lose them because that's familiar. You know what to expect from it. And so going out from something, even if you don't have anything left to gain, there's this safety in the familiar. And so like even though like I've outgrown it, this is not for me anymore. I know what to expect day in and day out versus this new thing where I don't know what's going to come, what's going to happen, but it is usually better. It is usually going to help you level up somehow. But it's scary to let go of that familiar, and it's hard to because you still there are people or things that you care about. And so when you lose them, like it's a disconnect, like you stop having that relationship or that connection to things that once were important and valuable to you. So it's scary, but at the same time it's super beautiful because it's like what new things are unfolding, what new people am I going to meet, what new opportunities are coming that I'm not that I have not been open to because I was filling those spaces with something else that is no longer mine to have.
Yeah, and I think like the same thing can be said as we develop ourselves as leaders, right? There's characteristics that we get to embody. And so when we leave characteristics behind and we want to embody a new identity, whether that identity is like, I want to improve my communication skills, right? I've always communicated this way, but it's not serving. I know it's not serving. And now I need to embody something new to be able to be a better communicator. And it just hit me even yesterday is the desire to make a change has to be greater than your
Mhm.
current behaviors, than your current circumstances. Because if not, you'll just stay in the same pattern.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's also making that choice to remind ourselves, no, I made this choice. We're going to continue to do this. Like we're going to continue to show up, even if it's uncomfortable.
Mhm.
You can basically take this analogy in any part of your life and implement it.
Yeah, it's super important. So I want to kind of be mindful of your time and other people's time. So we'll get ready to wrap. So if you had to, I think I have two questions for you. One though is what advice do you have for folks to push forward through the discomfort? Because I think that's the biggest thing that holds people back is the unknown and the discomfort of making a change. And even if you say, okay, I'm going to make the change today, and it still stays a little uncomfortable for a little bit, like how do you continue to push through that discomfort to get to the part where you're like, okay, this feels a little bit more natural now? What advice do you have for folks to get through that
Yeah.
point to that point?
My advice is discomfort is just a feeling. It's just like happiness, it's just like sadness. And so if you can embrace the discomfort, and there's been many a times in my life where I'm like, this is uncomfortable, but I can hold space for myself in this. And then on top of that, having a system or process in place. I'm huge on processes and systems. So knowing that I'm making this change, I have this system and process in place. So when the discomfort gets too heavy or it gets too much, the system's not going to fail me. And that system could be, accountability partner, a coach, a project management plan that's like, this is the due date, you got to do this, right? Or maybe it's, daily practices that help you stay grounded to continue to move forward. And sometimes we also get to understand why. Why do we want to push through the discomfort?
Awesome. Thank you. And then the last question is, I mentioned that you're the co-founder of Transformative Leadership, but what is that and how can people find you after this if they're looking to either work with you or just want to talk to you or pick your brain about human design or anything like that? How do people get in touch with you?
So the way you can find me, I'm Emily Adams on all the platforms, I believe. I am more active on LinkedIn and Threads and probably my YouTube channel than anything. My inbox is always open. Feel free to send me a message. There's no dumb question, like ask away. I'm an open book. That's how you can find me. And then transformative leadership was actually born out of a my business partner and I, we met in the automotive industry and we realized there's a disconnect. Either operations are bad or leadership is bad. And if we can bring both of them together and align them, that's what companies need. And we take a very different approach on leadership development. It's very self-development mixed with some corporate tools, mixed with some accountability and radical responsibility. um, but that's what we do. We're not industry specific, so we work with all types of industries, real estate agents, even some authors, coaches, software industry, manufacturing industry, mining. So we basically take the same process. Our process is all customized too. So we don't just do a, hey, here's your check sheet and go ahead and
Yes.
run with this. But we like to say that we meet everybody where they're at and we go as far and deep and wide as they want. So some clients will come and they're like, I just want one session. Okay, cool. We'll have one session. Other clients will be like, yeah, I need you for like a year because I don't really. So, and that's kind of our philosophy is we don't want to sell you into a program. We want to make sure it's aligned on both sides.
I think that's awesome. That's great. Excellent. Well, Emily, thank you very, very much for taking the time to chat with me today, for being my first guest. I called her a victim, my first victim before we started recording, but thank you for being my first guest on this
Thank
Stumbling
you.
Forward webinar series. I don't know what we're going to call it, but thank you. And again, I will put some details and things we can link underneath the recording on this for any of your contact info and whatnot if anyone has any questions. But thank you very much. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'm going to go ahead and stop recording here. All right, so it is done recording. But thank you. How did you feel about that? Because it was.
It was a great conversation. You are really, really good at this.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I just, except for me, it was more. I didn't want to have. I was a little bit. I was a little nervous about it last night because I didn't